Nick, welcome to the show. Lovely to see you. You've got a mysterious background. It's one of the entertaining things that we've had today with doing all these virtual interviews is that you never really know what's going to be behind someone, and you have misted it out. And we'll leave it like that. We'll leave it as a mystery for everyone. But thanks for coming on. Why don't we start by you just sort of talking about your business and what you actually do as a business, and also where you're at in terms of your actual sort of journey and where you are as a business in that life cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me, Steve. So my name's Nick, and my background is in technology and product, and working in that finance space has been something that's been something I've done for a while, but now we've really decided to build our own business, which is cool. The background for QuickaPay is that we are a buy now, pay later provider. And our entire kind of goal is to look at what people are doing at the moment, learn from that, don't make your customers think too hard, and allow these traditional underserved people like the legals, the accounting, the training organizations, give them a way to offer simple finance or buy now, pay later to their customers.
Right. So would you say that you're completely driven towards professional services? Is that as opposed to retail? Is that what you mean?
That's the focus for us right now. And I mean, it's an interesting point, because one of those kind of things that you do as the early stages, you kind of rove across the landscape and you think this is your target market.
Yep.
Quicker originally started off looking at the tradie space. We figured that tradies, Sydney, it's a lucrative opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
Turns out most tradies got a lot of cash coming in, and if you can't pay them and you start talking about installment plans, there's a million other places that they could be offering their services. So we generally found kind of a number of opportunities. And so we're now looking at that legal accounting space. And we recently just announced our legal now, pay later, which seems to have garnered quite a lot of interest from the space.
I'll bet it does. Absolutely. That's one of those things. Can you sort of tell us where the business is at? So when did it actually start, and what sort of phase are you at? What sort of size are you? I can't remember. I think you have raised funds already, but where all those kinds of sort of details.
Absolutely. So QuickaPay is another one of those Antler companies that people have heard about, hopefully.
We love them on this show. We love them.
It's good, right? I won't give them a pitch. They get too much airtime as it is. But me and my co-founder, Nate, we found each other. It sounds so lovely, doesn't it? We found each other in the very first Sydney cohort. So we were the first, almost inaugural Antler company to kind of be born. The background is that Nate's worked in financial services here and in the US. I've worked in I've built products such as working at Spaceship, CBA, and working at kind of a couple of finance providers here.
Yep.
And we kind of came across this idea of that whole tradies, like chasing invoices is hard. It wastes on average kind of like 40 hours a month chasing invoices to get paid. So we kind of resonated around that idea, looked at what we could potentially do. And yeah, we kind of founded Quicker off of the back of that, and it eventually became QuickaPay as we kind of like got clarity on what our market was and what it was that the product was going to be.
Yep. Okay. And so the Antler cohort 1, how long ago was that? That was 2 years, was it?
It was, yeah. 2019 was when we started. The nice thing about the way that Antler kind of helped us come up was one of the first things that you need to do if you're building a business. It's not just about having an idea and going, boom, we're going to do this. It's also looking at kind of like your strategy around what are you going to do, take it to market? How are you going to think and position your product? And also that path to capital. So that was one thing that Antler really helped us do. We went through the process. We got an initial investment from Antler themselves. And then they provided us introductions to some fantastic angels in the space in Sydney. And we leveraged that to raise our initial bit of investment, and we used that to power us for almost a year and a half. So we literally tried to build a finance company on a shoestring budget. So yeah, interesting idea.
Absolutely interesting idea. And I've actually become one of those Antler angels with the last cohort as well. It's a good program. So I think it's awesome. I think it's great you've come that way. All right, so let's talk about you. In terms of, you touched on your journey a little bit earlier. You mentioned Spaceship, which is always a popular company to talk about because it's just got such a cool name. But, how did you end up even going into that program? And just talk about, I guess, it's always interesting to see how entrepreneurs are born. And was there a moment where you just went, bang, I'm going to do this? Or was it something you've been wanting to do for a while? Give us a little bit of history into the journey.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So as you can probably guess from my accent, I am English. I it is what it is. But yeah,
I am too. You know that, right?
UK.
You know I am as well.
Pardon?
I am English as well, but obviously no one can pick up my accent. Now I feel really bad.
It changes over time. I got grief. I always get sort of like grief from my friends back home, and they're all like, throw another shrimp on the barbie, mate. I'm like, does it really sound that bad to you guys?
I know.
Anyway,
I get that.
They're just terrible people back home. English people will always try and take the mick out of you. Anyway, so yeah, my background in the UK, I've worked in a number of consultancies and building products. That was an interesting kind of step change. My background's obviously technology and engineering.
Yep.
I worked in building products, and I worked on a number of bizarre products from, we built a GPS-enabled ice cream machine. We built a Bluetooth-enabled horseshoe. There was a problem in Europe with people stealing ice cream machines. Not ice creams, the machines.
Really?
I mean, you might as well go for the sauce, right? Yeah. So that was one of my early projects.
And what was the second? What did you say? A Bluetooth horseshoe?
Bluetooth-enabled horseshoe. So we did some work as a consultancy. We did some work for Hong Kong Jockey Club. And what they had is they had a problem with horses would go to Dubai and just keel over. So what we did is we built a Bluetooth-enabled horseshoe that corresponded with a backpack, so you could actually track how well the horses were doing. Absolutely brilliant, hey?
I've never heard. I have a lot of clients who are in horse racing. I have a lot of friends who are in horse racing. I've never heard it. That is fascinating. Is it still being used?
I don't know. I'd love to think it is, because like that was one of my earliest jobs, and I don't know how good it was, the code, but listen, I assume that it works. And I assume there are still horses running around with Bluetooth-enabled shoes.
How bizarre! Okay, so carry on. I'm fascinated by that. Those two products. They are bizarre.
That. Yeah. So that was kind of the background. I then jumped into doing consulting and training work. So I worked for did some work for Hewlett Packard, Intel, Qualcomm, Arm, all the big kind of blue chip and techie guys. And I was going out there doing a lot of consulting work, and then eventually I kind of decided that I wanted to move somewhere better than the UK. And it wasn't Australia first. It was actually New Zealand. I literally put my resume up online, had a bit of background, and the first company that came back, I was like, that'll do. Went to New Zealand, lived on the South Island for just over a year, started a consultancy over there, ironically, and an online coffee company. New Zealand's first, may I add. We didn't get much traction, funnily enough.
So South Island is the cold one, right? Is that right? So it's much colder in the South Island. So you stuck with the cold weather, right? I just want to be clear.
Everyone says that.
But you did start two businesses there. So the entrepreneur was born as soon as you hit the shores, right?
The Kiwis have this wonderful attitude where they'll just make anything work. And I think it does foster it. There's definitely an undercurrent of kind of like making stuff work, building something from nothing.
Yeah.
And I actually really admire that about the kind of the Kiwis.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was working in New Zealand, and I got headhunted by freelancer.com, Matt Barry's company.
Oh, wow.
So I got headhunted, came across, headed up to kind of their core services team, and then kind of took a number of different roles. Campaign monitor was another one.
Yep.
Then I jumped to Spaceship. I was recruited by a guy I used to work with, and then ended up building the first internally built product, which was Spaceship Voyager. So I was working on the team there and kind of built that and took it to market, which was awesome. From there, number of different consulting roles, and then, into Antler. It was one of those things. I got called up by Adele, and she tried to recruit me previously, and I said no. And then she's like, I've got something for you. You're going to say yes. And gave me the whole high level, this is what Antler does. What's the worst that could happen? Always a compelling pitch. And then, decided to jump all in, and it was fantastic. I haven't looked back.
That's a good story. Adele can be persuasive. I know Adele quite well. So yeah, I can understand how that happened. But I'm interested. Do you think, obviously you've got a natural risk taking just by jumping countries. I know people who jump countries don't think there's much to it, but a lot of people find that quite terrifying. But so you've gone to New Zealand, you have started a couple of businesses over there, and I think you're right. There is a natural entrepreneurial feel about just Kiwis generally. You've then come here. And then I know Campaign Monitor, I helped them recruit for them when they started out as well. And then obviously Spaceship and so forth, and Freelancer. Those companies are, old startups now, if you like, that have become scale-ups and all become quite successful. Do you think that working in those environments was what fueled you to want to go back and do something again? Do you think that was part of it and sort of putting that feeling and thought process into your DNA?
Yeah, I jumping into spaceship it was a crazy time. It was very early, and we went from outsourcing a lot of our kind of like how everything worked to building it all internally. Very small team, very, very focused. And it was the nice thing was realizing how a incredibly motivated team, driven and all in alignment, can achieve great things that companies 20 times the size can't do. So after spaceship, like I said, I wanted some consulting work and was working at kind of like some larger companies here. The only issue there is that kind of like pace is so much slower. And you realize that there's that longing for, I created and shipped something in 3 days versus, this will take a huge committee with potential subcommittees just to press the button to release something every month.
Yep.
So that was an interesting kind of view to it. And I kind of missed that kind of space. And that fed its way into kind of like learning more about what Antler were doing, and obviously all the things that you learn and the different areas that you work in, they all have this kind of contribution of how much you know about running your own business. So having a background where I've started my own things and a little bit sloppily potentially, but always kind of like hacking it together, and then combining that with the VC-backed approach, which is what Antler provides you, you suddenly realize how important things like your modeling, your projections, your go-to-market, your kind of like product market fit, all of those more kind of like the big boy stuff, how important that is.
Yeah, interesting. So what sort of size are you now in terms of staff? Are you still quite small?
We're still quite small. We are a size we're 11 at the moment, which isn't too bad. And that includes someone who's working part-time for us. And most of our wage bill goes towards engineering and product. And then we've got some account guys. And of course, it makes sense. You can't be a FinTech without no tech. But yeah, so we've got a pretty good team. And again, I've got 5-person engineering team at the moment. And then one additional person helping me in product and UX.
Yep.
And that is pretty much that's the engine of kind of like, how do we grow? How do we build a product that works for the companies we're going with?
Yep. Okay. So it's good. Like, you've had your entrepreneurship, you've had your exposure to the startup space, you've had your VC background, you've learned how to do things the proper way, and you are where you are. What has been the hardest thing or the mistake that you learned the most out of in the journey that you're in right now?
I'd say the hardest thing was not knowing all the answers. And there's a big difference between what you think you know and and how you see things playing out. And then kind of co-founding a business is the first time I've actually co-founded a business. Previously, all my things have been independent. Yep. In which case, if I don't know, that's fine. It's not a problem because I can look at it, I can figure it out. But having that kind of trust where you lean on the other person has been an interesting one. One of the things that we did in the early days of Quicker was we wasted a lot of time trying to think, how do we scale marketing? How do we scale sales? The thing that was really interesting was that if you pull it back, every time you change sector or change focus, no matter where you are on that kind of product market fit or that growth trajectory, you're pretty much recentering that and resetting it. So you've got to almost go back to those early adopters. Whereas we thought, we're cool, we can grow, we can scale everything. But in actual fact, we were shifting our focus every time, and we wasted a lot of a lot of effort, I think. So knowing and getting those early conversations was probably a lot more important. Every time we've done that, where we've actually spoke to the new sector, spoke to the new customers, that's where we've actually generated our biggest kind of like introspection, where we've gone, this is the right way to go for now. Let's target it. Let's approach it this way. Whereas if you go, right, cool, we've solved tradies, now we'll double down on this, but the market's kind of like moving away from you. Yep. You don't win that way. There's no way you can meet the gap. So that was probably our biggest mistake, was trying to just scale up to kind of like a later stage than we were. But we've got a pretty good attitude to it now.
Okay, that's good. That's an interesting answer. I like that answer. Obviously, we are in a pandemic, as is evident by the way we are interacting at this very moment.
My lovely blur.
In your lovely blur, which looks a bit like some sort of jungle cloud back there. But anyway, we're going to keep leaving that as a mystery. Let's talk about how that's impacted not you personally yet, but more your business and more importantly, your team. Because I imagine that you would have had an office prior because you existed prior. And obviously, no one's in that office now. How have you managed to maintain your culture? And how has it actually impacted not so much your your growth from a product perspective, but you've obviously got to go and get law firms on board and so forth, and another. How's it impacted that? Because you obviously having to do that in a different way now.
COVID sucks. I don't think anyone can argue that. So some of our earliest customers, and this is the problem, right? We tried to build a finance company on a shoestring budget during COVID. And you say those things out loud and you're like, Nick, you're an idiot. You're probably right. So we obviously we started building things early. We did have an office. We were based out of Tankstream Labs, just where a natural place to go, given Atlas in the same building. So we started in Tankstream Labs. We had a very small team there. And it was an interesting time. We tried to kind of like all hang out quite a lot. We tried to obviously preserve that culture, but the early hires kind of set your culture. So like myself, Nate, my co-founder, we've got an account manager, we've got one of our senior engineers. Those guys are almost the steel thread that kind of like underpins the business. Yep. So as long as we're here, we're the memory of the business, we're the memory of that culture. And everyone we meet and everyone we interact with, we try and kind of obviously keep that moving. It is really hard though, doing everything remote. I don't know what it's going to be like. Obviously, everyone's saying that mental health is really important right now. And there's a lot of kind of like stop, think, breathe kind of products where people are trying to understand what the toll is going to be like. But you've got to make it clear to your team that if you are having a hard time, don't just throw yourself harder and harder and work. You've got to step back and actually say, hey, I need to take a mental health day. I can't do this today. And I think as business leaders, you've got to kind of appreciate that. You just got to appreciate people. Everything's not normal. Everything is weird, Yeah. So that's the mental health aspect. But I mean, even from a business perspective, a lot of our early customers, they've seen some really hard times. So we, as that kind of like black swan event, a lot of finance companies, you don't expect a worldwide pandemic to kick in and kick the butt out of your business. So we kind of came in, and our tech was quite early back then. We basically built in features that allow us to pause installment plans, pick them up, re-engage customers should something go wrong. These are all things that other loaning systems don't even have. So we've built in all these kind of like pandemic-proof kind of things. But yeah, we've had businesses that have kind of like folded, or they've re-emerged and they've come back to QuickaPay, which is quite cool. A couple of cleaning companies, ironically, have done that. Yeah. We've had a number of places like wholesalers who have just gone right now, which is really sad. And that's caused us to kind of like keep squeezing the toothpaste. There's something in here, but if we keep squeezing, we'll get some good stuff out of it. So yeah, we've moved across a number of different sectors. When COVID first hit, we actually did 100 plus interviews with a lot of our customers to actually find out what was the valuable part of Quicker. Mm-hmm. So it kind of let us have that moment to look at what we were doing and see if it was still solving the same problem. And it turns out it wasn't. They weren't worried about invoice chasing anymore. They were worried about payments and finance. So we actually launched payment links. We launched our API. We've got webhooks. We've got all this cool stuff now, which is great. But yeah, it totally encouraged us to look at what is the industry we need to help? Who can we work with that gets the most value out of what we're doing at QuickaPay?
That's good. That's good. And what about you? I've talked about everyone about this. Any two parts to this question. Firstly, any new habits that have developed because we are all living in a different way? And I will consider a habit anything you've done more than 4 days in a row. So you could have started it last week. So any new habits that you may have started, because I started one last week, so I'm going to include that. But also, any beliefs that you've changed? And I ask that question because we see a lot of candidates completely looking at the world differently. In fact, nearly all the candidates that we interview for whatever job are looking at the world differently now. And I think we'll continuously look at the world differently. So is there anything that you now look at differently? And is there any cool habits or strange habits? There was a guy who talked about a strange habit yesterday. I forgot what it was, but we'll have to watch the show again. But yeah, anything like that?
Strange habits, no. Thankfully,
doesn't have to be strange.
I've got one small habit that I do. We've got this lovely little cavoodle, and every morning she now knows. So I'm staying at my in-laws. So every morning she comes up, gets on the bed, and she just sits there, and she'll basically try and pour at your face because she knows that what I do then is I get up, I go down, I make a coffee, I get a ball out, and we sit and throw the ball for a good 30, 40 minutes before I start work every day. That is a new habit. The only downside is she's now established this connection that, hey, if Nick's outside, it's barking time, it's go time. So she will bring all manner of toys. She's got this little squeaky giraffe thing that she brings out. And I was trying to take a call and she's just barking at this giraffe and bringing it to me and barking at it. So that's my strange habit, but I blame her for that. It's definitely her fault.
I think you need to break that one.
As for, pardon?
I think I definitely need to break that one. It's going to prove difficult.
Absolutely. Oh, well, listen, as soon as we head back to Sydney, hopefully that will take care of itself. There's not much you can do in a small apartment in Sydney, thankfully.
No.
And then the other kind of habit that I have tried to do is every Wednesday, I think I mentioned it in a previous discussion, but every Wednesday I try and kind of like screen away, just me, moleskin notebook, and I'll find a quiet place and I'll just try and take some notes and think about how the week has gone. So I have that kind of reflective period. It sounds really cliche, but I think it's important to kind of like stop and try and take stock of everything that's going on right now. And the reason I do that is I try to be mindful about it rather than just sitting there mindlessly scrolling Instagram or Reddit or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah. Okay. That's good. I think
what's your habit, by the way? You said you started a habit. What is it?
It's not a strange one. I'm sorry. I mean, I said someone else had a strange one. I've started swimming at 3:00 every day.
Yeah.
So I live very near a bay, and there's a lot of dads from my kids' schools all live around there, and we're all sort of the same age, and we're all sort of the terrible fitness. And I've always read about how cold water is so good for circulatory and all these other reasons, right? And I've got a few of the gentlemen who are slightly older than me, 20, 30 years, who are looking pretty good. And then they all say to me, I go in the salt water every day. That's why I'm healthy. Now, whether that's true or whether it's a mental thing and a placebo effect, who knows? But so we thought we'd try it. I'm actually going to go into far more detail than I've told anyone else. We've created a club called Penguins. We all live in Parsley Bay, so it's the Parsley Bay Penguins. We've actually had some costumes made up. They haven't arrived yet. And we go down at 3:00, rain, hail or shine, and it's a sort of 75-metre distance across, and we'll maybe swim that 6 times, and then we'll all go back to work.
Yeah, wow.
And it is freezing as well at the moment. I think the water was 14 the other day, but it really wakes you up. And I'm not, I used to be a bit of a girl getting into cold water. Now I just strut right in. I've been doing it for so long now. I'm just straight in there. And you can't feel anything in your body for the first lap. And then you start to obviously warm up a bit. But it's actually almost painful on your head where the water's going against your head. But it's really...
How fast are you going?
Yeah, I'm like a powerboat. Well, no, I'm penguin speed. But what it does is it really gives me that energy for the afternoon. You know how you have this sort of, we're actually talking about it just before you came on. We were looking for snakes or chocolate because we got that 3:00 lull. We couldn't find it in the studio. Yeah. But that swim is a much healthier version of that. That's my new habit. And I've got to say, I actually look forward to it now. I didn't the first week.
Oh, wow. I've had to replace my previous habit because normally every morning at 11 till 12 and sometimes lunchtime, I'd hit the gym because I love lifting my weights, mainly because, you always get a result. You're going to have the worst day in the world, but you go to the gym, put the effort in, you get a result. Yep. And that's why I've had to replace it with cavoodle time. Like, it's not even the same ballpark, is it? Doing your swimming sounds a lot better.
It's not. My gym's done some innovative things. They've taken all their equipment to a variety of parks, put it in a trailer, and then so all the different trainers, I think there's 4 or 5 of them all at different parks, they come out every morning, they pull all the bench out and put it in there, and then you can go for an hour session if you remember at any of those parks, then you can go home and then they put it all back in the trailer. And they're continuously doing that. So I'm doing that not as much as I was going to the gym, but I'm trying to do it at least once a week. And it's quite nice working out in a park outside with the sunshine. It's not something I've ever done before, but so maybe you can incorporate that somewhere into cavoodle time.
It's not girl enough.
I don't know. I'll leave that one with you.
Sounds
right.
Good.
I want to ask you about working. So you're obviously going to continue to grow. And you're going to have to continue to scale, and you may have to onboard people in lockdown, which is a challenge, and everyone will deal with that in their own way. But if someone's looking at what you're doing and they're going, buy now, pay later, that's a space I really want to get into. There are a lot of people who do want to get into that space, and there's also a fair few providers out there, a couple of larger ones that everyone knows. Why would they, in your eyes, in your own words, why would someone want to come and work with you?
it's a tough one. QuickaPay is solving a different problem to a lot of these guys. We think it's doing it in the smart way, because we're kind of like saying, what has everyone else done? What worked? All right, but how do you bring that to an audience that's been underserved so far? So I'd say the nice thing about working at QuickaPay is we are a very driven team, and you do get to know a lot about everything that's happening. You can watch as we change the direction of the business as necessary. You can see very much the direct effects that your actions have. We ship our product multiple times a day. So we're strong believers in like having good pipes. So if your pipes are good, it makes it really easy to kind of like roll forward or roll back or whatever you need to do. So our team can deploy code and deploy product and change things very, very quickly and have the confidence that what they're doing makes a real effect. You can sometimes work at a lot of the larger organizations where you just don't get that same result. Like our guys are talking on the phones, they're helping people, they're doing kind of like customer support, they're helping on the tech side of things, and you're actually solving problems. And we feed it all into Slack. Big believers in using Slack and all the kind of like online tools that we can do. So we've got Trello wired in, we've got Slack, we've got Zoom, we've got all the goodies. So it really does still feel like you're engaged. Like every time you move a ticket or you update an image, there's a little notification and whoever's interested can see what's going on, that there are wheels turning. So we tried to build an online business from the get-go. That was one of the visions, is building a company that's designed around being distributed. So we've learned a lot of lessons from what people like GitLab have done, people like Envision in the US. And they've got a global team and they're now working asynchronously. We're not quite there yet. The furthest we've got is Perth. Which is, we got one guy over there at the moment. I think he's just checking it out. I'm assuming he's coming back to Victoria. But I mean, why would you, right? Perth. I'm trying not to insult anyone. But yeah, so I think with Quicker, it's what is a lot of those later stage companies, it's getting in at the early doors. It's kind of realizing all the things that take to build a product. Why does it look like this? Why is the thing here? Rather than if you get in at like year 4, year 5, you kind of land and you go, great, I've got to spend like 6 months coming up to speed, trying to understand what on earth happened here. You know, you're almost, you're doing the forensics to try and understand the history of the company, whereas you get a chance to actually build it with QuickaPay.
Yeah, that's a great line. And I think engineers particularly love that. They do. They love to build. They don't love to sit there and work out. They love to build. So that's a great answer. Mate, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been good to learn about your habits. It's been good to learn about where you're at, and it's been good to see why we should come and work with you. I think it's great. I'm going to enjoy watching what happens. Good luck with it all, and hopefully we will all be free and easy to get out and about soon.
I look forward to it, and thanks so much for having me, Steve.
Thanks, Nick.